like it. You want a podcast like it? Podcast like it's 1999. Podcast like it. Just podcast like it. Podcast like it's 1999. Podcast like it. You want a podcast like it's 1999.
Hello and welcome to Podcast Like It's 1999, the podcast we talk about the films of 1999 from a blood red pool here in 2021. I'm one of your hosts, Kenny Nybart.
And I'm Phyllis Gove.
And with us today is Becky Feldman. And Becky, I didn't ask you before, what's the name of your podcast again?
Oh, it's called Too Stupid to Live.
Too Stupid to Live.
Yes.
How could I forget that?
Kenny, can I also suggest that you go on this podcast, please?
Oh, yeah, please.
Becky, I love talking films with you. And I would love talking paperback novels with you. If you could find something that's more pamphlet sized, I would love to join you.
Well, first of all, Kenny, just for what it's worth, the book that I read was
Cowboy
200
Dragon.
Pages.
That's
the
a lot.
Cowboy Dragon. Believe me when I tell you, you
It
could read
flies
it in a day.
Yeah.
Big font, double space.
Big font, double space. The sex scenes are 20 pages long.
All right. So just because it's the most interesting podcast on the internet, Becky, why don't you just run us through exactly what you do on
Please.
Too Stupid to Live?
Okay. So I review with a lovely guest.
Or
books,
Phil.
Or like
me.
Phil.
I'm sometimes on.
And soon to be Kenny. Romance novels that are $5 and under. And we just and I was gonna say, like,
That's
they're
so
really quick
funny.
to read. There's no big words in them. You know what I mean? There's no like
guarantee
words
you.
that you're like,
I
what's
know.
this
That does-
a reference to? Like,
That scares me.
Agamemnon reference. That's not in there.
I will be completely honest with you, Kenny, that when Becky reached out and was like, "Will you come on the podcast?" You know, and I was like, "Oh God, I gotta read a book, and I gotta read a book quickly."
Sure.
And you know, we've got our podcast and we've got our work and stuff like that. And I was like,
Yeah.
a book. And then when I started reading the book, I was like, okay, I'll be done this in 48 hours. Like, this was like, okay. And I mean that with all due respect, but like, just don't think. I had the same feelings that you did, Kenny. That's all I'm saying.
And the other question I have is, are these generally ebooks? Are these things that you buy on Amazon? Are these Kindle singles? Are these?
Yes, they're usually Kindle stuff. Sometimes I'll find a used book at a store, you know, but usually it's Amazon because it's cheap.
Sure.
Or I can find, maybe someone will email me a book and be like, "Can you review this? You got it for free," and I'll be like, "Great."
All right.
It was an absolute joy.
I had so much fun.
I had a blast. Anyone that is looking for 90 minutes of talking about shape-shifting dragons fucking, this is really the podcast
good.
for you.
Yeah.
I like good podcasts about bad pieces of art. So what did you think about The Rage Carrie 2?
Did you see this in 99 or around 99, Becky?
I saw it maybe in like 2003. So like that's practically 1999.
But what made you want to watch it?
Gosh, guys, it was on. It was on.
It was on TV.
It was on TV. Okay, so as I told you before we started recording, I chose this and I was like, I have a lot of explaining to do. So Jeremy London, who was a heartthrob, and I kind of had it hard for him when I was in 1990.
Dazed and Confused.
Dazed and Confused. Or no, that's Jason.
That's Jason. That's the one in this movie.
Sir.
That's
now
one of
this
movie,
movie is Jason London, his twin brother.
Right.
And I was like, nice. Twin brother. Practically the same.
Same face.
Which is terrible. I apologize to twins everywhere. I know you guys are different. But...
I like the random people who have the twins who didn't come up as twins, but they both kind of became famous, like the Ashmores.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Like the Ashmores both kind of made it, or these guys, the Londons, or I don't know if you're familiar with Jose Canseco and his twin brother Ozzy.
Wait,
you know
Ozzy?
You know Jose Canseco, right?
I do know him, sure.
Jose Canseco was a slugger for the A's. He was a great steroid user.
One of the best.
He was the guy who literally wrote the book on steroids and more or less like broke baseball for good, but he's a crazy man. He has a identical twin brother named Ozzie Canseco. Now, Jose Canseco was one of the best players in baseball for a while. Ozzie Canseco was one of the worst players of all time, but they're twins. It's just the difference between if you take copious amounts of steroids and you just take the normal amount of steroids.
Do you also feel a little bit like the names also dictated the level of potential?
Yes, definitely.
It's like Ozzy is on the most steroids known to man.
Ozzy's just not going to be as good as Jose at really anything.
Yeah.
So, all right, so let's do this with the London Bros. Who has the better name, Jason London or Jeremy London?
Okay. Jason London, Jeremy London was the first, you know what I mean? Like he was the guy. And then it was like, oh, Jason London, but Jeremy London. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
He was the first to get to your heart.
Exactly. Yeah. And like Jason's great. Like I feel like if I would still find him attractive and sometimes will confuse him for Jeremy. Should I be married to Jeremy London and be visiting their family?
Sure.
Do you think you could tell them apart if we played Jason or Jeremy with screenshots? If I did a little screen share, you think you could do it?
Fuck.
I'm looking up Jeremy right now just because I need to know which was in what, because I'm a little bit confused as to what's in what.
I feel like Jason London's face might be a little longer, but I could be wrong because it's been Asian. Like the last time I saw
long face. Well, that's what they call him, old long.
Old long face. Can I just? I have to be completely honest here.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy's credits are pretty lackluster in comparison to Jason's.
I agree with you.
So are Jason's, but Jeremy.
No, Jason's got some. He's in fucking Dazed and Confused. He's one of like the leads.
Look at him.
And I'll also say he's in the Rage Carrie too. So which actually is not that bad, guys.
Hold on. I'm now looking up Jason. Okay, and Jason has credits, you know what I mean? Like things that actually I've heard of. I mean, and Dazed and Confused is one of my favorite movies, but he's also done like a bunch of stuff that's kind of like whatever. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard for me to write for either of these careers, quite frankly.
Either of these Londons.
Yes.
There's also one other major thing with these Londons.
Ooh, what's that?
Jeremy had some issues. Jeremy was on Celebrity Rehab and had some issues.
Right.
Jason, I believe Jason did not have issues.
Yeah, Jason's a stable one. I always go for the bad guys.
He's like the property brother guy that sells the proprities. Mm-hmm. And I think Jason's more of the wild card who like builds the properties, you know? Jeremy builds. Jeremy builds, Jason sells.
I need to think about this for a second.
Which one's married to Zoe Deschanel?
I could not tell you.
Not one of the London, one of the property brothers.
Oh, the guy who sells, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So apparently Jeremy was on Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew, which I've never seen, but he was in the 4th season of that show.
Yes.
So
did not watch it.
Did not watch that. Okay. So you saw this film early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
Jason London was in it, and you thought to yourself, looks kind of like Jeremy London.
This is the best movie ever. That's where my brain went. I was like, this is the best movie ever.
Did you see it in theaters, or honestly, it was just on TV?
On TV. Okay. Saw it on TV. But here's the thing. Then I watched it again maybe 2 years later.
Okay. She's with the builder. I was wrong, which makes sense. He's
good to know.
Hotter.
You know what? I appreciate that. That's a good couple. Okay. What was I saying?
Better than Ben Gibbard? They felt a little more on the same, like
that was like they were
very on
brand. Though. It was it was like too much. What was I saying? Oh, okay.
You saw it recently, like 2 years ago or something like that.
Oh no, I had watched it like 2 years later because I was in college at the time, and at the time I was like kind of really into like really ridiculous like gore stuff. So the massacre at the end made me laugh so hard.
Yeah,
and I will say when it's great. There are some great kills in it.
Great kills.
And then when I watched it on Friday, I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me? That's what I thought. I cannot believe I can't believe the okay, I'll be honest with you guys. I'm not like on podcasts all the time, but whenever I'm on a movie podcast, people are like, "Oh, pick a movie," and I pick a movie, and it's never good. It's Supergirl. I picked Supergirl one time.
Ooh, that's a movie I've seen more than once. Unfortunately,
I realized it's very bad. And then this other movie called Switchblade Sisters, which I was obsessed with.
I know that movie.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I think Helen Slater in that movie is the hottest human who's ever lived.
She's so beautiful in that
movie. She's a beautiful woman. She still is.
It's wild. It's wild. Yeah. She's my Jason London. But
she's my Jason.
So, but I think we have to ask one other question, Becky, which is what was your relationship with Carrie proper before this?
Now, I had seen Carrie to the Rage before Carrie proper, but then so it's Carrie to the Rage, Carrie proper, Carrie to the Rage. So it's like a sandwich.
Yeah.
Oh.
Carrie proper. Now here's the thing. After I watched it on Friday, I did need to watch Carrie proper again to kind of wash the taste out of my mouth.
Same here. Yeah.
Because I do feel like, now correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie to the Rage is kind of like the Phantom Menace to Star Wars, wherein it's kind of an insult to the first ones. You know what I mean?
Oh, I hear you on that. The one I was thinking was it's like H2O. The Halloween.
Halloween. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, where they take the surviving character, you know, have her played by the person who played the original character, put her in a kind of a guidance counselor-ish. I mean, I think she has a radio show or something. I don't remember. And then has all the shit happen again. But it is an insult to Carrie because look, I never had seen Carrie before this morning.
Okay.
And Carrie, is a 99. It's just spoiler alert. Carrie's fucking
great.
Unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's almost not even applicable to like compare it to Carrie. I want to compare it to the plethora of teen movies and teen horror movies we've seen over this year, 99. It's better than a lot of them. Like it's better than I would almost say most of them. I don't.
Sure. It's better than Stigmata.
It's definitely better than Stigmata. I mean, I think it's better than Idle Hands. I think it's better than Jawbreaker.
Yeah.
I think it's better than Drive Me Crazy. I think it's better than a lot of these movies that I kind of liked, which is to say I kind of liked this movie. I kind of like it. Like I think
you're gonna turn me around on this. I can fucking feel it.
I'm not like I want to be clear. Like I kind of like it, and I think there's plenty wrong with it.
Yeah.
But I don't think that it's the reason I think that Phantom Menace is not such a bad comp is because I think the Phantom Menace is okay.
I mean, listen, I have fun when I watch it. It's just the first second that Jar Jar Binks comes on, it's like,
it's not okay.
This is an insult. And then it kind of washes over you. And it's the same with like Carrie too. Like the second you see like for some reason or another, like there's like black and white college filmmaking MTV style stuff. It's like, that's terrible.
Nightmare.
It's fine. It's fine.
I think it's worth sort of, I want to unpack like the Carrie thing, right? Stephen King writes the book in the mid 70s. I actually just read his book on writing, which anyone who's a writer, it's tremendous. Even if you're not a writer, it's just a tremendous book. And he talks in that about starting Carrie, writing sort of those early scenes with the tampons and the showers and what have you, the locker room, and throwing it away, literally throwing it in the trash. And his wife digs it out of the trash, reads it and says, "This is good. I'll help you with the teenage girl stuff. We're going to get this there." The rest is history. Obviously, Stephen King has this illustrious career because of it. But he does consider it one of his more slight books. Like there's not a ton going on in Carrie for all intents and purposes. And I don't say that
you mean Carrie the book.
The book. Yeah. Like it doesn't have a ton of mythology. It doesn't have a ton of sort of, there's not a lot of meat there. It's really sort of a teenage a movie about teenagers being fucking assholes, and then a teenager that has telekinesis that can get revenge on them. Like, and that's all fine and good. I bring this up because I do feel like we've got 3 Carrie movies that have come out of a book that's like, is there a 4th that I don't know about?
There's one that was made for Lifetime that came out in 2001.
I don't know that one. But okay. We had 3 theatrical releases.
Definitely three theatrical.
3 theatrical releases of a book that's like just over 250 pages. And the first movie, as we all agree, is a stone cold classic. I would argue, did you guys see the Chloe Moretz remake that they did in 2013?
No, but I kind of want to watch it now.
I think you should, because I actually think, I mean, listen, it can't hold a candle to the first one, but it gets a lot closer to the vibe of what we're hoping to, you know what I mean? And Kimberly Pierce directed it. It's like, it's a well-made movie. Even if it does feel sort of like a greatest hits. All that being said, and my favorite part of it is that they shot it at my high school, so I got to see my high school burn, which was awesome. I highly recommend, if you're looking for catharsis, watch your high school burn on film. It is fantastic. But all that being said, this movie wasn't originally going to be a Carrie sequel. It was supposed to be a movie that I believe was called, hold on, I have the title here, The Curse. And it was just going to be about a girl that's cursed with the ability of telekinesis and sort of how she gets revenge on some of these kids. I bring all this up just to say that MGM then kind of shoehorns Carrie into and then it's called Carrie 2 Say You're Sorry, which I think is an amazing title and a better title than The Rage Carrie 2. Because I don't know why it's The Rage colon Carrie 2 when it should clearly be Carrie 2 colon whatever it is.
I don't know. She's not Carrie. She's not Carrie.
She's not. She's Rachel.
So anyway, I think she's Rachel. I think they're pronouncing that incorrect.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I think the biblical meaning of Rachel is Rachel.
But so they shoehorn Carrie into this movie. They do a rewrite. They lose the director. Amy Irving signs on, but only with De Palma's blessing, which he gives her. Because, like, what does he care at this point? Sissy Spacek turns down the opportunity to be in it, but says that they can use the footage because they need her likeness, and you can't do it without her saying okay. So they let her use the footage, which, if I would argue, hurts this movie because all it does is make you go, "Oh, I agree with you. The original movie's so much better than this movie."
Yeah, no,
it's like they were showing a different movie because, like you said, this was a 99 horror movie. And that now knowing that backstory, it's like all of it makes sense. Because you really didn't need the Carrie thing. And also telekinesis is different in this movie than it is in Carrie. Like in the first one, it's like, oh, my daughter has is possessed by the devil, right?
Right.
In this one, you have Amy Irving, Sue Snell saying there's a place in Princeton is studying this and you need to get help. And it's like not connecting because it's like, well, telekinesis doesn't equal rage and the devil.
That's the other thing, the other great comparison to Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
It's a midichlorian.
Yeah.
In midichlorian, the rage or whatever no one calls it the fucking rage, but they midichlorian it, which is just infuriating. I mean, that was just there's a bit of an uncanny valley with this movie in that if they don't connect it to Carrie, it's a Carrie ripoff. And I don't think
that's true.
I think that would be so like kind of offensive and annoying to people. So by connecting it to Carrie, you are connecting it to a movie that it cannot come close to. I have decided to ignore that and try to appreciate it on its own merits. And its own merits are like, it's a pretty bad movie, but it's enjoyable. I truly enjoyed it. I thought the kills at the end were great. I think it was differentiated enough from the original Carrie where you didn't feel like they were just retreading the same kind of character. She wasn't getting brought down for the same thing. I think they were trying to at least make some kind of point about slut shaming and some kind of point about, differentiating or the difference in standards between men and women. I think that they did a pretty good job of having the villains be the kind of villains I want to get murdered, which is,
I thought the same thing, Kenny.
17-year-olds with
when that guy's drowning in the pool at the end, in my head was like, good.
I was like that with the first Carrie too. I was like, I can't wait for you to murder these fucks. Mm-hmm. But this one, it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing, you know? Mm-hmm. And those guys were real assholes. And they also really read like the worst, you know, fucking Mountain Dew swilling, X Games watching, 1999 like proto Fast and the Furious bros. And, you know, Zachary Ty Bryant like always has been that piece of shit. So I think I think they did a really good job with the casting.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you a question, Kenny?
Do
you think that his friend looked a lot like Johnny Drama?
Oh, I thought that's who it was for a second. I looked it up. It's not him.
You think the main bad guy?
Mark, I think was his name.
Yeah.
He was the guy who literally had like Johnny's facial hair.
Yeah, but he couldn't grow it out.
Yeah.
He did look a little bit like Johnny, but he was kind of a thick boy.
Yes,
so
he was chunky.
Johnny's kind of a wiry guy.
Correct.
So
when he was taller and lankier, this guy's chunky and
this guy. I thought it was just his Jinko jeans because I thought it was like the style at the time. Like
that guy had a real defensive tackle quality to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but he had Johnny Drama vibes, but without any of the vulnerability that engenders
or
empathy.
charisma.
Yeah, well, whatever. I didn't think he was totally lacking charisma. I mean, he had to say like horrible lines, like "We were friends since we were dumping our drawers." So, like, that's not his fault. And his face isn't his fault. So
that's
give the kid a break.
His facial hair, though.
This is his fault. The thing I got going on.
I'm going to give a quick synopsis for the people that have not watched The Rage Carrie 2, which I imagine is a fair amount of our listeners. When her closest friend commits suicide after being manipulated by the popular crowd, quiet and bookish Rachel Lang decides to get back at the guilty parties. Although Rachel falls for sensitive football player Jesse Ryan, she remains determined to punish his callous friends. When Rachel discovers she has superhuman abilities, it ups the stakes for her revenge. Echoing a supernatural incident that occurred decades before. The Rage Carrie 2 opened on March 12th, 1999, in third place behind Analyze This and Cruel Intentions. It would go on to make $17 million on a $21 million budget. This movie costing $21 million is shocking to me. This movie looks like it cost $5 million.
To God, this is a movie I didn't know existed before we did this podcast.
Kenny texted me at one point. He's like, so I guess we're doing The Rage Carrie 2. Like, it literally just didn't even know that it was happening.
It was, you know what? More than most, it was, it's a cuspy one for us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're going to do them all, but we weren't necessarily going to do them all with such an illustrious guest.
It's true.
And give it like our full attention. We may have just like done me and you in 20 minutes.
This isn't, you shouldn't have.
I'll speak for Kenny when I say that I think we feel like if there's a guest that legitimately wants to come on and have like a great episode like you, where we can, talk Carrie, talk whatever, we are fully on board. But if it's a shitty movie that like no one cares about and no one wants to come on for it, then we're just going to bang it out and be done with it.
I'll say another
Fair
thing,
point.
all that being
you,
true.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a lesson for everybody who's ever watched a movie. Every movie is a rabbit hole. Right. Every single movie is a rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. And if you're willing to go down the rabbit hole, you will find some shit that's really interesting. So like this movie's obvious. You watch this movie. I watched Carrie first, but you watch this movie, you're going to watch Carrie if you have any level of curiosity. Then look, I'm kind of like not that great on Stephen King adaptations. So like I've never seen Christine. I'm going to watch Christine as soon as fucking possible.
Yeah, I've never seen it. I want to watch it too. Yeah.
So like there are other, and I think I've never seen Cujo. I've never seen Pet Sematary. There are other movies that like this experience has made me want to go and like, and Dolores Claiborne is like on my list.
Such a good movie. You'll love it.
So there all these flicks that like now I'm like, all right, I think that's a pretty big blind spot for me. So I think that I think what Phil and I have learned is there's something to talk about with every fucking film.
Yep.
You know, just like every $5 paperback novel about dragon fucking, there's something to learn and talk about. And if someone spent the time, even if they did it, you know, even if they did it in like 18 hours just to get it out there, that's interesting in its own right. So
I think Becky and I learned a lot about ourselves on Dragon Cowboy.
Yeah, and I learned a lot about myself with this movie. Like, I mean, anything.
There's a lot of like interesting teen dynamics, which we'll definitely unpack. There's a lot of sort of the thing about Carrie. Just let me very quickly say that. No. Let me just get these two quick things out. Movie has 22% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics, 33% from audiences. Ebert gave it 2 stars, which I find, interesting. The original Carrie worked because it was a skillful teenage drama grafted into a horror ending. Also, of course, because Brian De Palma and his star, Sissy Spacek, made the story convincing. The Rage, Carrie 2, is more like a shadow. I can imagine the story conference. Let's think of some reason why the heroine has exactly the same ability Carrie had, and then put her in the story where all the exact same things happen to her with the same result. People actually get paid for thinking up things like that too much, if you ask me. That's his review. But it brings up something that I want to talk about, which is I've not read Carrie, so I can't speak for the book, but I've seen the movie, obviously. And I think that why that movie has resonated so much, outside of how very well directed and very well acted it is subtextually what it's really talking about, which is like being a teenage girl seems fucking terrible. And you're going through all of these changes that you don't really understand. And you're terrified that everyone's going to laugh at you. And it's just, you know, this fear-based kind of horror show that you're going through when it comes to puberty is very well executed and unpacked through this horror novel and through this horror movie. This movie, which tries to do a similar thing, and I don't think necessarily fails, because I do think that it updates the horrors of being a teenager in the 90s in a pretty convincing way, just in terms of how sex is weaponized in a way that is in the original Carrie, but it feels like it's a lot more sort of nefarious, a lot more sort of really kind of ruthless and awful in this movie. I think that it does update a lot of that stuff. I mean, it's 20 years going on, the original film, and I do think that this film does that relatively successfully. Perhaps the thing it does most successfully, other than killing people at the end.
We know what's great about this film. From a anthropological standpoint.
Yeah.
There are things that happen in Carrie 2 that would not happen in a film today and were not going to happen in a film in 1999. So for all the talk about how coarsened and crude and, you know, pornographic our society has become, you would not show a teenager in a shower nakedly caressing herself and then showing her have her first period. You would not show a bunch of girls throwing tampons at her. You would not show all the slaps there are in Carrie. There is so much physical violence in Carrie that doesn't result in any kind of character moves. That's shocking and surprising. There's one slap in The Rage, and it's one of the more villainous characters, the stepfather, slapping Rachel, and obviously there's no reason to do it, but he's provoked. She breaks the rules, and that is some basic fucking, drunk ass dad shit. This is not like John Travolta slapping his girlfriend, the girlfriend slapping him back.
Gym teacher slapping. The
gym teacher slapping Carrie, and then later slapping Chris. Mm-hmm. And like this is just part and parcel for the movie. So there's it's interesting to me the things that you couldn't show. Now there are also things that like you could show in this that you couldn't show in Carrie. Like you couldn't show teenagers having sex the way they have sex in Carrie. You couldn't show her straddling him like they do, albeit through, two sets of video, but you see it. Mm-hmm. The things like that. There's I think there's a statutory rape storyline, which is like wildly problematic in the context of the film. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you would necessarily show Manu Suvari's death the way you showed it in the original.
It was fucking crazy.
Because that was, there's a difference between, the cartoonish, like, teachers getting electrocuted at the end of Carrie, and Mena Suvari like dying like the baby in fucking Dead Calm, like her head smashing into the window. Yeah. So they're both trying. I don't actually really think Carrie is trying to push the envelope as much as Carrie is trying to tell the story in the best way, but they are both pushing the envelope in terms of, you know, where good taste lies. And it's interesting the way these two diverge.
Well, I think that, you know, I watched the original Carrie again as well. And De Palma, who has a fascinating career in and of itself, you know, in terms of straddling that line of horror and sex and sort of salaciousness and quite frankly pornographic components, mixed with sort of dream logic and sort of what is real and what is not, sex and horror and all that kind of stuff. Like that's always been his thing. And sometimes he tips and it becomes just melodrama and silly. And other times he just completely hits the bullseye with something like this. I think about that opening 10 minutes that you mentioned, Kenny, of the original Carrie, with this idyllic, beautiful music that's playing and this like crazy gauzy lens. And you think you're in some sort of like weird fantasy, quite frankly, like all these naked teenagers. And then Carrie has her period and it turns into a full-on horror movie. And it can turn on a dime. This film, which, and I don't want to kind of drag the director through the mud, because it feels like this film was kind of put on her shoulders after the original director fell out. And it's just, there's a struggle going on here, which you can sense, truthfully, in the direction of the actors. The movie is at its best when it can be the most sort of like dynamic and crazy. And when it slows down for the character-y moments, it's a fucking slog. Like, it's kind of brutal at times.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that De Palma, it's just a different version. They're different spins on it.
You know what's interesting? Like, a lot of horror franchises started with these iconic and really excellent first installments. Becky, are you a horror fan?
You know, it's funny. I do like The Exorcist and The Omen. So that's why I'm like completely
70s horror.
Yeah, because I think like, and then I've watched the sequels and like they're good, but you know, they're not, how do I say? Cinema. You know what I mean? Like, do you know what I'm saying?
Diminishing
like,
returns.
I mean, The Exorcist, The Omen, Carrie, the 70s, Rosemary's Baby, a little before, but still, like, these are top of the top, right? And they were viewed as such at the time. I'm talking more the 80s slasher stuff, particularly Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, and I love Friday the 13th. Many people think it's not that great.
Oh, I thought it was good.
I think it's fucking awesome. But they all found a way to keep the franchise going after, you know, essentially in two of them, the murderer died. The killer died. The thing about Carrie is not a horror movie in the same vein as those films.
Yep.
Carrie only becomes a killer when she's wrong and only becomes a killer briefly. So to present it with this horror sheen, you know, put it in the horror genre, it's just not really what this film was. And it's not what The Rage Carrie 2 is.
Yeah.
But in 1999, there wasn't really room for a movie that didn't do that. So it's straddling this weird, like, it's like, I Know What You Did Last Summer without the kills for most of it.
I think it's like one of those movies, and this is what I think Carrie, the original, is that it's not necessarily the horror, but it's fear of the female. It's fear of the female body. It's fear of like what a woman can do when scorned. It's fear of what happens when you know about sex and you know about bodies versus what you don't know about bodies. It's what you it's like, it does. These movies thrive on like men's fear of women. And I think Carrie 2, The Rage, more so is a 90s movie and you just want to see like sex and cool kills and stuff. But I feel like the original Carrie is just like, don't piss off a woman. Who is this mysterious woman? And it kind of, It kind of reminds me. Did you guys ever see the movie Teeth? Do you know what
I know
that's
what you're
about?
talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So it's about a woman who has vagina
whose teeth,
dentata, which is teeth in the vagina, and that was like this, ongoing myth since Medusa times or whatever. And that movie, right, is billed as a horror, which I get. I absolutely get. But whenever I watch it, I see that character as a, feminist or whatever the fuck. Like I when I watch it, I see that character as a hero because she's like literally cutting off the dicks of predators. But like when you're looking at these movies through a male lens, like, it's a horror. So when I watch Carrie, I don't see it as a horror. I see it as like this this sad tragedy of a woman who like is raised with a mom who's like honest, who's crazy, who like has these like old ideas and values and is like raising her daughter based on her sins and like
alleged sins. Yeah.
Well, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, everyone have sex before. It's fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Guys, you're great.
Do what you
but you know what I mean? It's like you're using your own personal torment to like raise someone and they end up like, murdering everyone in their high school. So like it's very interesting. Like I'm just so curious, like how Carrie would be billed and advertised. Should it be made for like the same audience who would watch Bridesmaids or the same audience who would like watch like Girls Trip? You know what I mean?
Well,
like
it's funny you bring that up because I feel like, and I kind of want to talk about this at the three different films and three different stages. But you look at the 2013 Grace, oh my God, what? Chloe Grace Moretz movie, which is sort of trying to do a little bit of what you're talking about, Becky. I mean, it's trying to seem cool and hip, but also acknowledge the classicism of this original film. And it's and that push and pull kind of put it in no man's land. And I think that's one of the reasons why it was actually a relatively successful film, but it wasn't the gangbusters hit that they thought it was going to be.
Right.
I kind of want to just talk about. We've talked about this a little bit, Kenny, but I feel like this is a good opportunity to talk about it a little bit more in terms of where horror was in '99. We're post Scream, so we're in that meta-ish universe of kind of acknowledging the tropes of horror and the kind of snarky Kevin Williamson, what have you. But then we also have like Stigmata and Seven, and I guess to a certain degree, End of Days. Although that's not really a horror movie, but it does feel like there just wasn't a ton of horror that came out in '99, and there
wasn't a ton of good horror.
Right.
There was Blair Witch, right? So
sure, which is great. Yeah, but that's more. I mean, that's more psychological. I mean, when I think of a horror film, I'm thinking of what you're talking about, Kenny. Your Jasons, your Freddy's. There's nothing like that.
So all right, so it's funny because Blank Check on the last podcast. About Boys in the Hood. I don't know if you've listened to the podcast chat, but they make the point that all of these 90s Black led films set in inner city environments were all, not all, but mostly really great films, right? And then, you go on from Boys in the Hood to Men's Society, Dead Presidents, Juice, Fresh. A lot of great movies came out in that, period. And then Don't Be a Menace to South Central came out and kind of put a very big, bold period on the end of the sentence. And people stopped making those movies because they almost became embarrassed. They then extrapolated to say, it kind of happened with Scary Movie and the teen horror boom. Right. And Scary Movie comes out in 2000, right? And there is kind of this big fucking period on the end of this horror sentence that was petering out in 99. Like there are a few, there's Idle Hands, Jawbreaker, like I said, Urban Legend was the year before. There were these not so great movie Teaching Mrs.
Tingle. Yeah.
Like these movies were kind of like on their last leg anyway. And then Scary Movie came and basically said, all right, we will now make fun of you and you will be too embarrassed to play on any of these tropes anymore. And then found footage happened, and then J-horror.
So is that the next? That's the next thing, right? Found footage and Saw, right? Like those
really
are kind of
saying,
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they were saying, and I think they're right. I think it's J horror for a minute.
Yes.
You know, obviously the Ring and the Grudge and et cetera. And then found footage kind of took a little longer. Like Saw was the next thing. So you kind of had your quote unquote, you know, torture porn thing. Yeah. And then found footage took hold. But the larger point is these movies died right around now. Mm-hmm. Yep. Right? In 99, like the tropes were so well known. The funny thing is it was built on a spoof. Like Scream is a spoof. Like, don't forget that. Yeah. Scream is a movie that is saying this, we are giving you the blueprint. We are breaking the house out of the studs, and you can see everything we're doing. We're just going to do it, and it's still going to scare you. And that's the magic trick. It's like one of those magic tricks where they tell you the end first, and you're like, I can't believe you still did it. Yeah. And so, but like that is the brilliance of. I mean, the thing about Scream. Yes. Right. You know what I mean? Like that's why, and everyone tried to do it after and just no one could. It's just the weirdest thing about Scream and the weirdest thing about Hollywood, and I think this actually plays into The Rage and Carrie a lot, is Scream is so brilliant and so perfect and so wonderful. There is nowhere to go from Scream. No. And going from Scream to the next big one being I Know What You Did Last Summer. I Know What You Did Last Summer was a cheesy ass book that was in every library in every elementary school in America. It was some shit that was school approved.
Yeah, I read it. I had to do a test on it.
Probably like 12, right?
Fucking failed.
It was school approved horror. Nothing could have been less fucking cool than I Know What You Did Last Summer. And it was almost like we don't know what to do. Like we don't know how to follow this up. We're going to take 100 steps back and give you like straight up lame shit. And none of these movies are good. I think The Faculty is pretty good, but that's about aliens.
I like The Faculty. Yeah.
So like none of these other films are like any good because it's this no man's land where they're trying to figure out Scream. Scream's already been figured out and it's irreplicable. So,
I mean, it couldn't even do it itself. Like even there's a discussion to be had as to whether the sequels. I think 2 is a lot of fun. I think 3's a mess. You're a big fan of 4. But like
4 is different, but 4 is 100 years later, and it's amazing, and it's just amazing on its own merits. 2 is doing the same thing the sequels. 2 is doing the same thing. It's the exact same thing. It's like now we're gonna ruin all of your chances of doing sequels because we're gonna fucking show you how that sausage is made. So the thing about The Rage and Carrie is like, as you know, Phil, I'm not the world's biggest Brian De Palma fan, but like it is inarguable. This guy is a fucking artist and magician behind the camera, and like. That and Sissy Spacek's performance, and obviously the source material, but like, you know, Stephen King movies are very hit and miss. Yep. So that Sissy Spacek and Brian De Palma and Piper Laurie are your secret sauce. And if you're not taking all those elements up to that level, you're just going to be left with, you know, a pretty basic horror movie that is fine. And I think it was kind of fun when you just accepted that we don't stand a chance of getting near Carrie.
I couldn't agree with you more. I just want to kind of put 2 sequences next to each other because I think it's worth talking about that. And then I want to kind of unpack, and Becky, I very much want to hear your thoughts about like Rachel's character and some of the stuff that she's dealing with. But I want to just put the 2 big ending set pieces next to each other to show how different these movies are. But like Brian De Palma's ending, Kenny, when the fucking pig's blood comes down and the sound goes out and you're just hearing dripping and you're listening to her, you're just seeing her snap. And then the fucking split screens come and the screens start moving all over the place. And you're just like, this is fucking incredible. Like it's just magnificent. And it's no surprise that it's the scene that everybody remembers. But it's fucking great. And it's just her just looking at things drenched in blood and people going up in flames and being electrocuted and flipping cars.
All credit to De Palma and all credit to Sissy Spacek because that is iconic. What she's her stillness, the way her hands are out, the way her eyes are wide open, the way she walks. If I did that walk in like a random room and I had never seen this movie before, you would know who I was doing. Like that is so iconic.
Yeah. It's incredible.
And you know what? Like the thing that I didn't know because you don't see a movie, you don't know everything. I didn't know where they were going with the William Cat character either. You know, and that was like crushing too in its own way. And the bucket falling on his head was brilliant. And then he died like that.
It's great.
Good shit.
It's good shit. It's good shit.
Yeah.
Now you put that next to The Rage Carrie 2, and I'm not just going to sit here and dunk on it, because I do think that there's some interesting stuff there. I think Kenny highlighted that moment when they show the video of her having sex with the guy, which is fucking terrible and awful, and you really feel the grossness of high school and what it must have been like when it still probably is like. Social media, I imagine, has only made it infinitely worse, but like that sort of rawness, that exposure that she has, and how awful that would feel, and then mirroring that to obviously the pig's blood from the original. Then what you get is a I gotta be honest, like a kind of cool sequence of her just killing people in a whole bunch of different ways.
It's
like
clever and awesome. Like there's so much creativity. I mean, I was like, I liked her character more, even though I know as the director doing it. But like, I was like, you go, Rachel, with your crazy ideas. Yeah, that spear can go through two people.
You can slice up people with CDs.
Now that to me, I was like, when that happened, I was like, this is the 90s. This is the 90s. Like
a good way to kill. Good kill.
Yeah, like if there's like one film sequence in 90s horror that will just like define it, it's like pew pew CD. Pew, pew. Yeah, and it was like
great shit.
It's
I loved that they were doing it at Bernie's house. That was cool.
They were.
You know, it was very clearly.
It really felt like that fucking party.
You know, that was the kind of house you do want to see fucking destroyed. Like if you can't destroy
windows. Come on,
you can't destroy Phil's high school. Yes. The next best thing is to destroy this, like, you know,
I agree.
This opulent like cathedral to some person's ego. And that was wonderful too. I mean, I have to say, too, this movie, which doesn't really have a lot of particularly potent imagery in terms of like what it's trying to say, I did think that there was something kind of nuanced and great about the tattoo. That was a good effect. Right? Really cool effect.
It was a good effect, but I don't know. I
didn't love it around her face, but it was a good effect.
It was cool. Yeah.
Well, two things. The first is Kenny's point is, so what happens is as she's flipping out, the tattoo starts to pulsate and beat like an actual heart,
that was good.
Which was a fucking cool effect.
That was cool.
And I was like, that's rad. And then the vines or the thorns around the tattoo, around this heart that she has, starts to crawl all over her body, and she's covered in all these sort of thorns. Which I think, I gotta be honest, kind of cool. I'm into it. But what I also like about it is it's her connection back to her friend who committed suicide at the beginning. So it's this idea of like revenge that's coming from the friend, and this sort of that bond that they had. Like, that's cool.
I'll bring up one other thing that we were kind of dancing around, but I feel like this is such a loaded question, Becky, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Sure.
What do you think of Promising Young Woman?
I really liked it. It like the ending. I mean, I was thinking about it for like weeks, and like,
which ending?
Yeah, the ending to Promising Young Woman. Oh no,
I know. Which ending to Promising Young Woman? Because I think the ending where she dies, is unbelievable.
It's unbelievable, yeah.
And the rest of it is not great. But the ending where she dies is like. I don't know. I would have. I know the story is that Emerald Fennell couldn't get funding for that version,
right?
So this wasn't her choice, which is really kind of upsetting to me, personally, just as a person.
Wait, what was the ending that she originally wanted? Sorry, I don't know that I.
Just the ending where she dies, and not the ending with the text messages and all that stuff, and the comeuppance and the police.
So her like getting the revenge from the great beyond.
That didn't happen.
What you're saying?
She wrote the version where Carrie Mulligan dies, and they get away with it.
Wow.
And, and that was the end of the movie, and that certainly says something. There's certainly and that speaks to me to what you were saying, Becky, about well, about men being afraid of women and men being afraid of what women can do. But ultimately, like it's a very bleak picture of how entrenched the patriarchy is. Mm-hmm. That being said, like that's what that movie is about. And I think that, you know, I do think that the end of that movie like kind of sadly undercuts that in a way that I don't really understand. I think it's, I mean, I do think it is a little bit of Emerald Fennell throwing up two middle fingers and saying you want that mega happy ending. We'll give it to you. But.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I didn't know that, Kenny, about the original ending that she had planned, which is more potent. Mm-hmm. Certainly doesn't sort of round the edges off of it, and certainly doesn't kind of give this sort of. Yeah, I think that when I watched it, my roommate and I both kind of sat with it after it was done, and you know, there's a lot to sit with, there's a lot to think about, and I understand why people love it. I understand why people don't love it. Like it's a divisive movie, but it's a bold movie, and I think that as with a lot of original endings, Emerald's original ending probably would have been the stronger one. But I think you were making a connection between this and Promising Young Woman.
It was Carrie. I was. Yeah, I mean, you're saying me or Becky?
You. Sorry.
I was, because this is, you know, it is about. Look, Promising Young Woman has a woman essentially getting revenge on behalf of her friend who committed suicide because she was, you know, slut shamed, more or less. This is the same premise 23 years earlier, plus telekinesis.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, and it's a lighter touch, to be honest. It is?
Like, it kind of bums me out because it's like people are totally okay with seeing women killed in the beginning of the movie, but at the end of the movie, they're like, no way.
Nope.
I like Emerald Fennell's original ending because that's a huge fuck you to the patriarchy. Because like women's deaths are always being used to fuel like a male's plot line, you know, and it's like you would like. This is in the beginning of fucking Born Identity or whatever the fuck, you know, like, yeah.
By the way, you should watch General's Daughter. But that was the other kind of like original conception idea, which was, and this is why I've been shitting on Very Bad Things recently, because it kind of opened up to me. It was this idea of, what if, it's such a stupid thing. I mean, I'm almost being too glib, but like, what if the stripper who dies in a movie actually was a person? You know?
Oh my God, you guys, like, I've always had this idea for a movie with, you know how like there's all those scenes where like you meet the you meet the main guy and like he like, there's like a naked woman in his bed and he like gets a phone call from the FBI or whatever. And then he like gets off the phone and he's like, get out. And this nameless woman gets out. I want to see a movie about like what her day is like of her going like,
I love that.
You know, like, I like had this one night stand with this guy, and then the next he gets a phone call.
There's a great comedy in that. Where like she keeps. I mean, it's almost like Melissa McCarthy's Spy, where she keeps kind of like running into this guy as just like that.
Yeah,
that's great.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that the end of Carrie 2 feels very sort of oddly cathartic. It certainly works, like as that sort of last 20-25 minutes are playing out. I did find myself going like, you know what? Yes, I had to sit through a bunch of stuff that a slog of, 90 minutes or so, or 70 minutes or so. But it was worth it because I got to see the lenses of someone's glasses.
That was a great kill.
Shatter and stab themselves into her eyes. That's a great fucking kill, which then leads to her castrating the other guy, and what looks like she shoots his dick and balls out of the back of him.
Yes.
I mean, it's really, it's fucking great. It's great.
It's very satisfying.
It's very satisfying.
To what you guys were saying earlier, I feel like this is the first movie I think I ever saw where toxic masculinity was addressed, even though that term wasn't used. But like all of the movies at the time, right? Like there was like She's All That, or, you know, 10 Things I Hate About You in terms of teen dramas. Like the way the men and the football teams acted, status quo. But you have this movie where they're kind of more or less acting the same way. And then they're all killed. And
yeah,
if I was a bit older at the time, like if I was like, you know, if that movie came out like later for me in high school, I would have been like, this is my favorite movie. Like,
well, think about the fact that like American Pie, the conceit of American Pie is we all got to get laid. This movie is how many women can we have sex with, and we'll write them all down in this book.
Well,
it's
yeah, it's the same thing.
That's the only difference is you're talking about, you know, the guys at the top of the food chain in this movie. You're talking about a bunch of incels who like can't pull it together in American Pie. So I use that term literally. That's what they are.
I love it. Honestly, I'm glad they didn't. I'm glad they got laid because like
they're
Lord knows
who knows what they would have. But that's what they are. They're and the thing about American Pie. Look, I think American Pie is like the worst, and I think like it's only gotten worse. And I think the thing about American Pie is like the thesis behind American Pie is like, you know, nice guys deserve the hot chicks. Like,
we're entitled to pussy.
Yes, because we're nice, and we know that, and like we look at the secret book of getting girls off, and that's the secret. Like, it's the same fucking shit. And at the end, they all win them over, and they're all wonderful guys, and they all like, you know, it's basically Entourage without like fucking it's Entourage but like more pathetic. Like it's Entourage but like more pathetic. It's like it's the same idea. And this movie is like honest about it. This movie is like eyes wide open about like how gross that is. And like, you know, I'm not sitting here saying it's a mortal sin, but you know, it's a movie. You get your fucking comeuppance when you do bad things in movies.
Yeah.
Well, it's also like you've got the Jason London character who is, you know, getting notches on his bedpost or putting girls' names in this notebook that they have or whatever. He has sex with the girl while his buddies are like 100 feet away watching and like cheering him on. Like, this is fucked.
And he's a piece of shit to the girl, and he's and he just is like, ugh.
Oh, he's basically doing what happened in Promising Young Woman. It's the same thing, like on the tape, right? Except he's the guy, you know. Except he's you know the guy in the ring. He's Al.
But then they try to flip it at the end and make us feel sorry for him because he actually loves her, and I'm just like, what the fuck is this movie trying to say about like the final scene? Where she's dying or she dies, flash forward to him in college. He has a vision of her. And then we're left with this sort of like, he's this gaunt look on his face, this like fear, whatever. And I'm just like, what? Am I supposed to like, what am I supposed to take away from this?
You're supposed to like him.
That's another thing. That guy was a total dick up until he met Rachel. And he only knew Rachel for a week. So he was a good guy for a week.
A week?
You know,
what do you want? You want the Nobel Peace Prize for that?
You know what's interesting? You know what's interesting? It's a trope that's used a lot in these movies, right? Where the popular guy lowers himself to date some unpopular girl.
She's all that
happens in Carrie to some extent. Like I believe that kiss was real. I believe he really did kind of fall for them and over the course of that prom. So the movie that that I argue very strongly for has its eyes open in terms of this thing is Cruel Intentions, where Sebastian dies at the end, where he is not absolved of his sins, where you can't just like turn around and say, now I'm a good guy when you've been so bad. But that brings me to another point. You can't say what Zachary Ty Bryant did is statutory rape without also acknowledging that what Jason London is doing is also statutory rape.
Statutory rape.
Assuming, and I think this is a pretty safe assumption, that the girls are the same ages and the boys are the same ages because that's their group of friends. Right. So it's super fucking weird to me to use statutory rape as a cudgel when it is convenient for the plot, and then ignore it completely when it is your protagonists doing it. Mm-hmm. I will be honest, I did kind of ignore it at the end of the movie because the movie wanted me to.
Yeah.
But the movie clearly wanted me to. But it is like a very weird thing that they did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like at the time, there were these movies. There was She's All That, 10 Things I Hate About You, where a guy is either forced to go on a bet and ask the nerdy girl out, or he is paid to ask the nerdy girl out. Here's a movie. No one is asking Jason London to be into Rachel. He's just into Rachel because of something she says in English class.
Correct. About Romeo and Juliet.
About Romeo and Juliet. Yeah, she said, "I don't believe in love," and then it's like, nah.
Wow.
She's she's so smart. Fuck yeah. So there was like there is something appealing there, and I think at the time in the 90s that was like a fantasy at the time for I think teen girls or at that time. And I also think that the term statutory rape was thrown around like the way, you know, silly crimes are thrown around now. Like, where it's like, oh, you like the way, you know, election fraud
I think you're right.
Something. And it was just like, oh, this joke of like, oh, the second you say statutory rape, like that's it. Like the way, I think, was it Snooze now? Whoever it was who was like, this is going to be a statutory rape. She's using the crime as a way to just get back at someone she doesn't like. Like she wasn't like what they were doing, what they were charging him with, what they were saying they were charging him with was just to take him down. They were just finding any sort of, you know, the crime to pin this on him. And it has nothing to do, like it had nothing to do. You know what I mean? Am I making sense? Like,
yeah, no, 100%. It was used as sort of, you know, a plot device, if you will, or used as a way to get back at him. They were sort of, but it's.
Well, it was convenient, right? So what if he's 17 and she's 15 and statutory rape laws don't apply at that point?
Yeah.
That is Sue wasn't going after him. I think that they actually hit this really well. Sue wasn't going after him to protect anyone. She was going after him to try to, you know, help herself. The Sue Snell character is an interesting character in Carrie. She really does seem like someone who tried to change. But
I agree. I want to unpack that, but before we move off of this, I just want to say that so apparently this plot borrowed heavily from a real life 1993 incident in which a group of high school boys or jocks known as the Spur Posse were involved in a sex scandal. I don't know if you guys knew this, but apparently the Spur Posse was a group of high school boys from Lakewood, California, who used a point system to keep track and compare their sexual attacks and statutory rapes. The founder of the group chose the name the Spur Posse when a favorite basketball player of theirs, David Robinson, signed with the San Antonio Spurs. I don't know why.
Great basketball player.
I'm sure he was great. The group came to national attention on March 18th, 93, when the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department arrested a number of members for various sex crimes. Prosecutors later dropped all but one of the charges after being unable to prove most of the encounters were non-consensual, although many were with underage girls, some as young as 10. One girl was later interrogated by police, said she'd been in bed late one night when a teenager appeared at her window and demanded sex with her. She complied because of the rumors that the Spurs would harm women who resisted. Police had the opportunity to prosecute the considerably older boys for statutory rape, but declined to do so. So that happened. But on the Sue Snell thing, Kenny, which I do want to unpack, I do think that when I was reading up on this before I watched the film and the Amy Irving connection and the fact that she was being asked to do this film. Sorry, there was a fly. She was asked to do this film. She ultimately does it. It actually does work as connective tissue. Her character is a good bridge between these two films because of exactly what you're talking about, Kenny, which is that Sue's character in the original obviously does these terrible things. She's haunted by this thing. I mean, literally, it seems like she's attacked or what have you by the visions of this. And the idea that she grows, wants to be a better person and all of that, she kind of gets the short end of the straw when she gets a fucking harpoon or a fucking fire poker through her head at the end.
It's a menace argument for a second, because I was just like, she was like such this, like, she's one of my favorite characters in Carrie, because I think it's like something, we've all had moments where we might have been a dick to someone in school, even if we were picked on, and it like you get in trouble for it and it still haunts you. And it's like, you don't really see those types of characters in a lot of teen movies anymore. And so just to like have her character wasn't great in this iteration of the movie. But then it's just like, I gotta stop her. Bing. Like it was just like the most like it just like kind of like
I kind of liked
legacy of this character.
I kind of liked it because
it was a great kill. Again, a great kill.
Yeah, in its own way, it's kind of like shining a light on the weird the strangeness of her as connective tissue. Right? Yeah. Like she had she's the only character who survived that movie. So like you're gonna do it with her, you're gonna do it with no one. But it is strange. And like I don't know. Again, take this whole movie with a grain of salt.
Oh, for sure.
One big grain of salt. Yeah.
I mean, I do love that when this when this poker. So what happens ultimately is the poker goes through the back of a guy's head, through the door, and through the front of Sue's head. And then J. Smith Cameron, who plays the mom, sees this and goes like, and just like basically gets the fuck out of Todd.
See you later.
All right. I guess I should go.
The great J. Smith Cameron.
Which, by the way, I knew it was her from her voice at the very beginning. She plays Jerry on Succession. And the second that she's painting the walls and you hear her say, like, you can't take away my daughter, I was like, that voice.
Yeah.
Definitely Jerry.
How
she's
weird
pretty
it
good
is.
in this. Yeah.
Well, she's the best.
It's funny when, like, I laughed out loud when they were like, like, this is meeting Rachel when she's like 12 or whatever, and they're like, we have to take your mother away.
She's like, why? Like the kid was like only okay, but I did like.
Oh, I don't think the kid gave a shit. This woman fucking paintbrushed her. Like she was weird.
With hilariously red paint. And it also like begs the question, why now? Like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, why is, and again, I'm like ripping into it, but
did you guys catch that the insane asylum was called Arkham?
Yes, I did. I even wrote that
guys. What's happening?
How come they weren't sued?
It's almost like there's like a movie insane asylum. Like it's like how they used to have to. It's like
Arkham is in what's his face? H.P. Lovecraft has an Arkham Asylum as well.
He does.
So that's why they were able to do it.
It's almost like how 555. It's like you have to use that. It's like if you said it is Asylum, you have to send an Arkham. So he's got to be Arkham.
He's got to throw her in there with the Joker.
I think the irony of this movie is like, all right, so Carrie is such a stylized movie, and it doesn't have to be. It's such a triumph of style. This movie couldn't be made with less style, and the style, the little flourish of style, like that horrible black and white stuff, only served to show you just how much this movie should have just stayed in its lane and just not even tried or tried harder. I mean,
it made me think about when I keep wanting to call her Carrie, when Rachel has her first sort of like telekinetic attack, if you will, which is when Lisa Minu Suvari jumps off the school roof. It goes black and white-ish, and it does this kind of like shaky kind of and it made me think about the Burbs, Kenny, when they find the bone and they do the and it made me think of like Wayne's World. It was, but it's
that was
just
the best part of the Burbs.
The telekinesis in this always plays as funny, whereas like it never feels funny in the original Carrie. It's not just scary; it's just like it's powerful. Like
it's emotional. It comes
works.
from like when she's at the height of her emotions, and it's like zooming in, poof, explosion of this thing. And this was just like hilarious.
It's interesting because I didn't want to watch this movie. I mean, obviously I was going to, but I mean, like, who wants to fucking sit down and watch The Rage Carrie 2?
Sure.
And I almost immediately, I wrote it on my thing. I almost immediately was like, all right, I'm comfortable. Like, I get this. Like, I feel like I know where I am. Yeah. The thing about Carrie is like, you are never comfortable.
No.
Like, even the scene you talked about at the beginning, that quote unquote, you know, fantasy sequence is very shocking and off-putting in its own way, because it's so unexpected and bizarre and uncomfortable, and you know you're in for, you know, a movie about pig's blood. But this movie is eerily comforting, considering it's allegedly a horror movie. I know exactly where I am. I'm in fucking 1999, and Limp Bizkit and Korn is playing, and I got it. Or in the case of this movie, 9 Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson, and they did mention they mentioned Shirley Manson. And there was another thing for another
garbage.
I loved that was my favorite part of Jesse's character, is that he liked Shirley Manson.
He liked Shirley Manson.
Why I love him. Yeah, I was like, oh. Yeah.
But can I also say,
I think Amanda Suvari had a hole, which I love that.
There was a Marilyn Manson poster on.
There was Marilyn Manson. Yes, bad. He's bad.
Bad. Don't do it. But I do think that I do think we're forgetting the very, very first scene of the original Carrie, which is really fucking fun.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the volleyball sequence with this beautiful aerial shot that comes down, and they hit the ball towards Carrie because they know she's going to fuck it up, and she does.
They literally say, hit the Carrie, she'll fuck it up.
Yeah.
and then they lose, and one of her teammates goes, "You're a real bag of shit."
Yeah.
And then the girl who always wears the hat hits her with the hat. And I love that girl. I love that she wears the hat to the prom. Like, she's so fucking great. And that's one of those little stylistic flourishes. I'm wild about it. Who comes up with the girl who always wears the hat? Who's one of the popular girls? She has her own
glasses in this one.
Yeah.
Who wears the glasses? Who's a popular person wears glasses?
Well, what one who's gonna have glass in her eyes later in the movie?
Take her fucking eyes.
That was great. The glasses of the eyes. First of all, Rachel Blanchard, who I've always loved. She's glasses of the eyes into harpooning Zachary Ty Bryan in the penis,
and blasting his penis and balls out of the back of him
into the pool,
and showing that's what that movie. That's the
best thing ever. Like I say, it's really, like, honestly, it's good filmmaking, and I mean that.
It is.
I mean that was like awesome, because like it was just like so satisfying. It's the most satisfying kills.
Yeah, Becky, you make a really good point about the glasses, because the whole movie you are kind of like thinking, what? Who's gonna hang out with this girl with glasses?
Who's that popular nerd?
I have learned for years that if you wear glasses, you're a nerd. These are Chekhov's glasses. You know
what? You're absolutely right. Yes,
they are.
And that's it. That's a good rule of cinema now. If you're listening, if you have a cool character with glasses, something better fucking happen with those glasses.
Something's gonna happen to those characters' eyes.
I totally agree.
It's true. I mean, it's like when the equivalent of like the inhaler. Whenever a character fucking does the inhaler in Act 1 and Act 3, they're gonna be going like that.
Yep.
So I say that way in a house with 3 asthmatic kids. But
I do think that, so when we do get to the high school for the first time, you got to love a high school. All the teenagers look like they're in their 30s and there's ska music playing.
You should love that. That's good.
I also think that I do have some, you mentioned this earlier, Becky, I do have some issues with our timeline, which is that like, she goes to school, her friend kills herself all in the course of one day, even though it looks like Lisa wears a different outfit. It's all just sort of in a weirdly condensed amount of time. Same with the Jesse infatuation. Like, it all happens very, very quickly, but it is what it is. The Basset Hound, Walter getting hit by the car as a meet cute is a choice.
You would never see that in this day and age.
No. The guitar score, deeply melodramatic. The telekinesis shattering Jesse's windshield, which is kind of cool, I guess. And then later, Jesse's like, "Oh, I wonder why my windshield shattered." It's like,
he was like, I think someone
question.
threw a rock. And it's like, good reason, writers. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
it's a lazy movie.
Asshole right now.
No,
it's funny that you
the
brought
movie
up Scream.
can withstand it. This movie is built to withstand strict criticism.
Fair point.
You mentioned Scream earlier. There's then that sequence where Rachel's at home and Eric and his friend Mark are attempting to scare her by like calling her up and pretending to be like Donald Duck or something while they smack on windows and scare her, and it goes to black and white a whole bunch.
But he also gets out. First of all, right, this shit sucked. This is the worst part of the movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like the whole thing is predicated on the idea that Rachel's gonna go like talk about something.
She has a photograph. That's the thing.
Like, come on. So they're gonna go give her a lesson in scaring.
Yes.
That doesn't tell it. And then Zachary Ty Bryant actually like comes up with a good idea. I'm gonna fucking bust her face in with brass knuckles. Like
crazy.
He's gonna bust her. First of all, you need brass knuckles. Second of all, you're gonna bust her. What are you doing, dude? So that is a really bad part of the movie.
It's a really bad part of the movie. And this is when we really get into sort of this really gross stuff with the friend as well, who's trying to defend his friend against rape charges, and then we get into the whole like the lawyer and politics and trying to finagle these kids out of these charges and what have you. Then we have Sue taking Rachel to the ruins of her original high school, which are still there, still readily available.
High school.
No one
cleaned it up.
It's all still burned. It all
trying to figure out
looks
where
like
they
it did in
shot
76.
I think they built that. Is that where the $21 million went?
I think so.
Weeds growing in it. Like
it looks, it's like a mausoleum now. It like looks like it's got this like
looks like
Gothic.
the Coliseum. It's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. I'm like, what?
And also it felt like it was a 5-minute drive away. You know what I mean? And it's like, well then, like, how did she not know there's like a crazy blown up high school 5 minutes away from her other high school?
Yeah, and then of course
there. Like,
there should be like a whole bunch of people like doing seances there, like to try to fucking bring
like,
Carrie back.
The whole town should be like, this is only like 20 years later. The whole town should just be like destroyed. A generation of children were murdered in this town. It should just be flat in this town. Like, and just
it should be like the Sweet Hereafter. It should be like everyone's just like fucked up, but they're not.
I would love to see like a fun coming of age dramedy that takes place in this town where Carrie happened.
Yes.
But this isn't about that. It's about someone who's like trying to start their own ice cream business or whatever, and they learn like
the first ice cream business post Carrie.
Exactly. Yeah.
We can eat ice cream again.
Would watch.
And it's just like, you know, they're going on their first date, and in the background we see Carrie White. This is your fault, and then they keep on going. You know what I mean? Like that. That to me,
it's like great. The Leftovers, but like everyone's fine with it.
I like that pitch. You should write that. Carrie,
so many great.
It's all your fault. Literally, I remember in the original Carrie, which I watched obviously the other day. There's a janitor scrubbing walls that says like "Carrie's a bag of shit" or something.
Yeah, Carrie eats shit. Carrie White eats shit, and he's scrubbing it as she comes to the gym.
And they did it. It took them and again, she wasn't in the gym for a week. And it took him a week. Like, oh no, Carrie, like you were just like letting kids do gym with
they were just all. It was all over the gym. It was everywhere. Which brings me to the analog of this movie when the popular girl.
Oh my God!
First of all, I want to give props to the scene that was done perfectly. The daytime sad ass football game.
Oh, it's the worst.
Sparsely attended. Like it's the sparsely attended football game where people are hanging out on the hill. That's what football games in high school that aren't in Texas actually look like.
Really?
Oh my God, dude. Like I went to, I'm from New York. Yeah. We had a football team. They were a fairly good football team. They played on Saturdays like they do everywhere else in the country except for fucking the South. And like no one went, and the people who went kind of messed around, and it was a play. I went to one game, and all my friends were on the team. I couldn't be bothered to even go ahead and support my friends, but I know what it looks like because as a kid, you'd go here and there, and it's mostly families, and it's people just like barely paying attention because high school football is slow and no one can complete a pass, and it's awful. So I thought that was really great. But then Jason,
that was intentional.
It was a budget thing, but it was okay. It was unintentionally flawless. And then Jason London's car, after he beats the team, gets spray painted with "Devils rule, Devils break your." First of all, call the other team the Devils. Hilarious. Devils kick ass. Devils break your car and shit. And then we learn that the girl
slashes tires so she can
give him a ride. And she drops. She was holding on to the spray can out the side of her convertible up until he's in the car with her.
She drops it literally as she drives away.
As she drives away.
Phenomenal.
There were so many ways to get rid of this spray can before. He wasn't even there. Throw it under the car.
It's the most mustache twirly stupid thing in this movie. It's phenomenal. It's fantastic.
It's hilarious.
I want to highlight my favorite moment. Legitimately, my favorite moment in this movie is a wordless scene that I loved, which is Rachel putting the makeup on, the makeup montage before she goes out on the date with Jesse.
Right.
Yeah. Because she never wears makeup.
She never wears makeup. She like washes her face a bunch of times. The look on her face of just feeling so completely out of her element. It's the most human moment in the entire movie. It really is. It's beautifully acted. It speaks volumes about what she's going through and what this teenage girl is grappling with. That she likes this boy, even though Lord knows why. But like, it's just a really, really good moment. Unfortunately, it's then followed. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, she had to me strong Thora Birch vibes, and when her walking next to Minister Very felt very much to me like Thora Birch may have elevated this movie just a little bit more. That might have been, because I think she was this girl was kind of lacking charisma and wasn't just wasn't really cut out for what this role needed. But and I think it's the kind of role that if you give it to someone who really isn't like an actor. Like if you gave it in 1999, like you gave it like Anne Hathaway, like she would have just eaten the fucking room up and had so much fun with it,
Totally.
So I think that there might have been a missed opportunity there to find someone and just I just watched Freaky, the Vince Vaughn movie that the
what's
actress's
her name? What's the actress's name?
I think it's Catherine Newton.
Yes, that's it.
Yes, from Blockers. Big Little Lies.
And she's awesome. And it is now, granted, things are a little different now. People understand the value of like starting a career with a flashy horror movie, a Blumhouse movie. But like, she's awesome. Like, there's just, or fucking Megan Fox in Jennifer's Body. There's just there's room for that kind of performance.
Oh my God, why am I drawing a total blank on her name right now? From Mank, Amanda
Seyfried, yeah.
Like that would have, the reality here is you got a $21 million budget. You could have thrown that around a little bit. You could have got a name in this thing, or at least someone who was burgeoning.
She's probably, little past high school at this point and can't be mentioned on podcasts anymore, I think. But Rose McGowan, like this is a Rose McGowan.
Oh yeah.
Yes, 100%.
Like 100%.
Yes.
And she
any of the leads in Jawbreaker you could have put in this. Yeah.
She did. It's funny because she did Jawbreaker, and I think this would have been cooler because because then she was in Planet Terror, where she also it was a little more grounded. Despite having a gun for a leg, and it was a little more grounded, and I think she would have killed it too. And I think that, I think there are just a ton of people who would have killed it. And it does make me feel like, because one of the notes I wrote down is this a quote unquote real movie, and not on a snarky thing, like more like did they set out to make a good movie, or did like kind of a fun movie just kind of happen?
Right.
Yeah,
like
this is one of those
grabby thing,
It feels very cash. Listen, we've talked about this a little bit, Kenny, on previous episodes, but MGM is in a tricky spot in '99.
Always has been.
Perhaps always has been, but they got this. That Thomas Crown Affair was a pretty big hit for them. They had Stigmata, which was also a big hit for them, but they've also got the Mod Squad, which came out earlier in '99. They've got this. They've got some stinkers mixed in there, and I think that they thought they had a piece of IP that they could run with this film. And it's a bummer because, to your point, Kenny, and I don't mean to denigrate the lead actress. I think she's fine. She's just not what it needed. And if it had been one of those, like, really, you're not going to get Sissy Spacek, but something electrifying and something a little bit that you're just like, I need to pay attention to this. I think this movie could have been, at the very least, profitable.
Yes.
So I think that, so all that being said, at this point we have maybe the worst scene, but yeah.
It's another crazy fucking pitch is Anna Faris, because like what I love about Anna Faris is Anna Faris was smart enough to recognize, like, Cindy Campbell, the character in Scary Movie, was more than just a spoof lead, and she was able to show so many different shades of herself, and it really launched like a very, very successful now like 20 plus year career. Somebody could have recognized that in this role, that even if it's bad, you are going to have your Sissy Spacek moment that you can just destroy at the end. So
who also might have been interesting is Lily Sobieski.
Oh, would have killed it.
Yeah.
Great casting.
Like, that's one
Perfect
of those things
casting.
you're like, she could have absolutely nailed this. And it would have been at a time when, she could have been above the title and all that.
And your girl, Sarah Polley, would have murdered it too.
Oh, I mean,
she would have been good.
She would have been just unreal. But that's, I mean, she would never, well, she did do Dawn of the Dead. You do have now a slow motion sex scene to the cheesiest music you've ever fucking heard at this point in the film, where we're supposed to believe that these two are falling deeply in love with each other. Now we have perhaps the biggest leap this movie takes, one of the biggest leaps, which is Sue manages to sneak Barbara out of the institution so she can confess.
You thought that was the worst scene?
That was good.
No.
I agree.
I thought the sex scene was the worst scene.
Oh,
I think
good.
this scene is the best scene. This is the scene where you're like,
Jason
what?
Cameron can move.
Yeah.
She was like a rodent out of there.
It was incredible. I don't know why Sue thinks this is a good idea. I don't know what she thinks is going to happen when the mom sees. I mean, all of it's
Tell her it's
idea.
genetic. So what?
It's all bad. Then we have Kenny's favorite football game.
But Becky, you said this. The fact that there is an institute that studies it at Princeton was actually the funniest line of the movie. There's a telekinesis, and they study the trait, the recessive gene that you can get at Princeton, and you can get help.
Yeah, but like, what is help? Like, what? That's
what's that look like?
Too. It's just like, I'm gonna start the first therapy for telekinesis.
It's like the beginning of Ghostbusters when he's zapping him. Like, that's what his fucking thing is. So there's also we forgot to mention something after the football game, which made me so cringe. Was Rachel congratulating Jesse after he wins?
Was so weird.
It was so weird, and she's like pointing at him, and he's pointing at her, and I'm like, "What is this?"
And she just walks on the field
she ran on the
alone.
field.
Yeah, it's all just awful. The party sucks. It's too brightly shot. It's cheap production values. Like, it's really fucking bad. But like, it works because once the shit hits the fan, then like all bets are off and they can have fun with it. But the beginning of it just really kind of looks like shit.
Oh, yeah.
We've talked about all the other shit essentially. I'd say that the only thing that's worth maybe talking about a little bit more is so everyone dies. She basically kills everybody. And then she's left pinned under a balcony.
I have a question about that. She can literally move anything, and she couldn't move a balcony off
move
her?
that. Too heavy. Too big, too heavy. Can't do it.
Too big, too heavy. Yep.
Okay.
She literally could move a car.
They really should have.
You have to work up to it. You have to work up to it. It's just like, do you think she could move the Earth, Becky? Do you think she could move the moon?
I do wish.
Could she move herself?
There is a limit.
I do wish. By the way, to your point, she by telekinesis launches Jason London.
Yes.
launches him into the pool a good like 200 feet away. So he probably weighs about as much as that thing that's on top of her.
Yeah.
I do wish that Jesse did ask, hey, couldn't you just move this? Like, I do wish that he had asked or something. But then they have a moment where she says she loves him and he needs to leave in order to save himself, and that she's going to, I don't know, chooses to die in this situation. I don't completely understand. He then catches on fire a little bit.
His hand,
and that's when she throws him into the pool.
He turns a little Freddy Krueger.
And then we jump to the 1 year later in the year 2000. Jesse's now studying at King's University. He's got Rachel's dog, Walter. And
he actually got into King's. I'm so impressed. He didn't go to Princeton, though. I'm surprised he wasn't studying in the telekinesis ward.
So then he has a vision of Rachel, and she shows up. They have this really, touching kiss or whatever. She's looks like a doily. She's dressed up in some fucking weird kind of heavenly outfit or whatever. They kiss, and then she like turns into stone or something and shatters.
Shit, jump scare, guys.
Yeah, that was
really
that jump scared me too. I will say that.
Legit jump scare.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It was exciting. It was awesome.
Well, here's what it was. Here's what it was. It was like, wah! And then it was, wait?
Yeah.
That's what it was.
I loved it. I loved that ending. That was fun for me.
And then panically he wakes and sees a vision.
Are we supposed to believe in Carrie 1 that somehow her trait, her recessive gene, sunk the entire house into hell?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. What do you want to do, Phil? You want to?
Yeah, let's rate this thing.
You want to rate this thing? You want to rate this bastard?
Let's rate this. Before this podcast, I don't know if you know how our ratings go, but basically we rate every film from 0 to 99, 0 being the worst, 99 being the highest, 50% being the threshold with which you would recommend this film to somebody else.
Okay.
We do a rating before the podcast and a rating after the podcast to see whether or not this conversation had altered your opinion in any way. This has altered my opinion. I came into this podcast, this film was at a 20 for me. I was not a fan.
Whoa.
Okay. 20. Like I really was
I'm actually surprised though.
Which is why when you started talking earlier, I was like, he's going to turn me around on this thing, because I think I was just like, again, I watched it and I was like, this movie's taking for fucking ever to get there. And then like the last 20 minutes were awesome, but I was like, was the first fucking like, hour and whatever worth it? And then like we started talking about it, and I did start thinking about like putting it next to the original Carrie. And obviously it doesn't hold a candle to that, but like it's doing some stuff. Like this movie is not completely devoid of anything. So I've gone up to a 40. I can't recommend this movie. I'm not going to say to someone, watch Carrie 2. My apologies. The Rage Carrie 2. I would not recommend it to somebody to watch, but it's better than I came into it thinking it is. So I'm at a 40. What about you, Kenny?
Never saw this before. Before this podcast, I had it at a 61, which is pretty good. I like this film. And you want to know what? Like, I think this is the first film we've done, which is wild. We've done thousands. I think this is the first film we've done that actually scratches that so bad it's good itch. That people are always like, they always are searching for. And like, quote unquote, so bad it's good movies are good. Like, let me put that out there.
Sure,
like, so bad it's because we've seen so many movies that are so bad they're bad and just bad. But like, so bad it's good movie. So bad they're good movies generally have to work in a way that works with you instead of against you. And I feel like all the things we're joking about and making fun of, like those aren't like mortal sins. Those are fun, goofy, weird decisions that were made instead of like things they forgot to do, and like fun, silly, absurd things that like just like were fun to goof about. So I am not going to go much higher. Like, don't get me wrong, this movie like kind of stinks, but it's a fun flick. Like I'm gonna go to a 63. Like I'm never gonna watch it again because life's too short.
Right.
But like If this was the 90s, I would.
You know what? I'm gonna amend my recommendation line here. I'm gonna say to someone, if that person has watched the original Carrie and they want to watch this film as a companion piece to the original Carrie, I would say go for it. But I would not say in a vacuum to watch The Rage Carrie 2 and say, like, you know, if you're looking for a good time, I think it's interesting as a mirror to the original film.
You know what?
And
it's so much better than, like, for instance, Stigmata, which is like,
Stigmata's not great.
Which just sits there like molding spaghetti and meatballs the whole movie. But this is like,
but that movie, can I just say what Stigmata has going for it that this movie doesn't?
What?
It does have a visual style. I'm not into it.
It has a visual style I hate, but it has a visual style. And it's a visual style that has aged very poorly.
Terribly.
But yes, they definitely tried, and they have, you know, great actors at the center.
Becky, what do you think? What's your rating on The Rage Carrie 2?
I think I would rate it at a 70.
Nice.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
I would not recommend it to anyone younger than us who hasn't seen Carrie.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like people like our peer group and older are the ones who will appreciate it.
Yep. I agree with that.
No one else. Sticking by my 70.
That is
a good grade.
Amazing. I think it's great that you guys love this film as much as you did.
We did.
I know.
I like it. It's good. Well,
I'm sensing that.
Next time you watch Rage Carrie 2, watch The General's Daughter right after. Okay. And your grade will go up 20 points.
I bet that's true. I don't doubt that.
What are we doing next week?
We are doing The General's Daughter next week.
Stop it! General's Daughter!
Can you believe that? I know. What a coincidence. We have Jordan, and I'm definitely going to butcher her name, but I'm going to try. I think it's Crecchiola. I could be wrong. She's a writer. She's written for Wired, Vulture. She's awesome. We love her on Twitter.
She's a frequent drafter on Screen Drafts.
She is a frequent drafter on Screen Drafts. She's going to come on to talk about the John Travolta movie that was a hit because it was sort of in that corridor where John Travolta could kind of do no wrong, it seemed.
That's true.
It is directed by Simon West of Con Air fame.
The great Simon West.
It is written by the great William Goldman. And
the actually great William Goldman.
I'm excited. I think we should probably do our top 5 Travoltas, right? I don't think we've done our top 5 Travoltas, have we?
I would love to do a top 5 Travolta.
Probably do our top 5 Travoltas. I know that Jordan's very excited to come on and talk about Madeleine Stowe. And let's be honest, who doesn't want to talk about Madeleine Stowe? She's great. She's awesome. So yeah, General's Daughter next week. Get excited. Becky, thank you so much for coming on to talk about The Rage Carrie 2 with us.
Oh my God, this was a dream. So delightful. I can't tell you how much fun this was.
Becky, and now you have a better sense of what I'm into. So please choose my $5 or less paperback accordingly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cannot wait to listen to the episode when Kenny comes on your podcast. I also hope that you'll come on our 1989 Patreon, perhaps. I'll send you the list of what our 89 movies are and see if there's anything on there that you might want to come on for. But honestly, Kenny talking about whatever piece of romance literature you send his way is going to be the highlight of whenever that gets to hear my in my ear holes. It's gonna be great.
You're welcome anytime.
Thank you so much, Becky. We really
thank you, Becky.
Okay.
Simon West really hasn't made good news.
Bye guys.
Podcast like it. You want a podcast like it? 1999.